Okay, ready? So just to show you how the structure, when I said I need directories, if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have this excuse me, this directory. Now that I have it, you'll notice how the bin will have the compiled version and so on. So I haven't changed anything, but this is what has happened by organizing it in a directory when I chose that create separate directory, just so that you know. Okay, now what we have here, let's look at it, what's happening and how do we need to proceed. What are we trying to do? We've just created a project, and this project is a Windows form application, right? On the right hand side, you will notice that there is a solution created. So it's called solution. It's basically the file that you can double click and run, and it will open up on its own. And then inside the solution, you have another directory called Lesson1 Tuesday. This has occurred because of my clicking that. And inside there are a few files which you will not understand, of course, but let's start with the simple one. Let's start with program.cs. And let's relate it to your Java. The program.cs is the file that automatically runs when you run your project. There is a start button here. There is also a start button under debug, right? And this is the short form, this green button. You can say start and it will start to run. The application will start to run. But this is the file that starts to run when you say start. And what is in this file? The program is called program. The class is called program. Therefore, notice how it is called program.cs for CS sharp. And it has a method called main, like your Java, right? Except that the signatures are different. There it is a small main and so on. So this has a capital M, but it is case sensitive. And then the most important one in here, these are basically just if you bring your mouse over it and see what it is, these are just methods that are coming that kind of set your environment. But the main one that is of interest to me, which I want to show you, is basically this one. It says run, create an object of type form1 and run my application. You'll say, what is this form1? That form that you created, form1.cs here. So you're saying create an object. What happens with when you say new form1? An object gets created. And do you recognize these opening and closing brackets? What are you calling? The constructor of the class called form1. So you're saying create an object of that form1 class and run it. And what happens is this. So when I say run, when I say start, this main method gets executed. This main method creates an object of this class form1.cs. What is form1.cs? This is form1.cs class, right? It creates an object of this and it will render it on the screen okay. I had this problem before, and what did I do to set it right? There is one way which I will do right now, but this is just occurring in my Windows 2017. So I Googled it and I made a change. Now I forget what it was, but there is an easy one which I can do right now. I can say start without debugging and it will work. So there it is, the form that you created. Your GUI form is right here. So program.cs is the code that runs. Inside program.cs, if you notice, there was a main method that gets executed. And in the main method, what did you say? Create an object, new form1. You will say, where is the constructor? I'll show you where the constructor is. Just an empty constructor, but I'll show you what it is, right? So if I open up this form file and when I say run it, it creates an object and there it is. The object is rendered here. There is your GUI. There is your form. You can maximize it. You can minimize it. And you can close it. So these three buttons are there by default, right? Now, this is your GUI front. This is your front end. If you want to look at the code of this .cs file, if you go view code, this is the code file that was generated for you. Let's look at this code file also now. There are some using statements right at the beginning, The ones that are grayed out are not yet needed. The one that are in black or which are not grayed out is the one that is needed right now. So it is using the namespace called system.windows is the namespace, and .forms is basically it's basically like your packages, java.lang whatever, java.util whatever, right? You can, if you can kind of relate to it. So it has automatically highlighted. This one is not grayed out. It is saying I'm going to use this namespace, system.windows.forms, and from this namespace is coming the class called form. And you need that form class. Why? Because you are extending that form class and creating form1. So notice how form1, the colon in C# is the reserved word extends in Java. Okay, so form1 extends form. So what have you done? By default, a form1 was created for you, which is extending from form. A constructor was created for you. This is the constructor that was being called in main.cs, okay, in that main method. And it is calling something called initialize component, a method called initialize component. Where is this method? This method is actually right here. This form that you see as a form here, like you see as a form here, has a designer file behind the scenes. And there is your, where is it? That's strange. Why don't I see it? And there is your initialize component method. And what does initialize component method does? Not a great deal. This is what it does. It creates a container for you. What is a container? Something in which you can put something. Form is an example of a container, right? It auto scales the font. You can just kind of read, click and go to its source and read. It just gives it a particular size. And then it gives it a text called form1. What is this text? It is talking about this text here. This text is form. So this, okay, now kind of look at it, what is happening. So when you create a Windows form application, two classes get created, two classes, .cs, two .cs files. One is called the form, the name of the form, whatever, which we will change. We don't want to call it form1. It makes no sense to me. One is called whatever .cs, and the other is called that whatever .designer.cs. Why? Because your application consists of two things. One, the form, the GUI component, right? And its corresponding file is this designer file, which you will almost always never have to touch, because whatever you do in this form will get translated to the code and it will automatically be saved in designer. Therefore, it is easy. We don't have to design it ourselves. We will design the GUI here and it will automatically write code and put it in the designer.cs. So you will hardly have to ever go and make changes to it. The second file, which you will have to make changes to, is the corresponding code file to this. This is where you will put your code. So therefore, you see it says partial in front of it because it is not a complete file. This file plus your designer file, which will also say partial in front of it. Both of them together is your application. Therefore, it says partial class, partial class. So your form1.cs and form1.designer.cs code together makes your application. The designer.cs has your designer code, whatever you're designing on the form. And your .cs file without the designer will have the code that you write for your event handlers. What happens when I do this on my form, right? That's your event handler. And both these classes together make up your application. So the designer.cs is being done by the system for you. That doesn't mean you should not know what is happening in it, but the .cs is something that you will code yourself. So the designing is being taken care automatically. You don't have to worry about it. But I want you to worry about it because I want you to read that code and understand it. Because we don't want any magic. We are programmers. We don't want to say, oh, this is happening. How is it happening is what we want to know. But you will hardly have to ever do anything to that file. So I'll show you how things will change. Now, before we do anything, I want you to do this. I want you to change the name of this. It's like your .java file. Do you ever call your files Java 1, Java 2? No, you give them good names. So same here, right? So go to this, do a right click and rename it. Now there are certain conventions. Now let me tell you, because I say certain, in Java there was a fixed convention. Here there are certain conventions and people are still not satisfied with this convention. One convention is that any control that you use, any container, any component, you're using a form, you're using a button, you're using a radio button, put that name, form or radio button or text box, put the name of the control right in the name so that anybody who reads it, oh, you're talking about the control form. That is one convention. That word form for forms, button for buttons, label for labels, it's right there inside the name itself. And then you give it another name like Hello World form. This is your Hello World.java program, so you're calling it Hello World. One convention is this. Some people say put it in the front, form Hello World. Some people say Hello World form at the end. And there is a third convention which I am going to follow, and the book follows it. Therefore, I am also following it. They say use a 3-letter abbreviation. Go FRM for form. Started with form. So that's the third one. So form complete before or after. And the word FRM, the 3-word abbreviation FRM, and there is no rule to it. All 3 conventions are out there. And there is a 4th convention which I like. It says, why are you attaching the name of the control in your name? Why? For whatever reason. Suppose I change from a radio button to a checkbox. Now I'll have to change the name. I had called it RDO for radio button. Now I'll have to go and change it CHK everywhere, and I have to change it everywhere in my code. We don't do that in Java. We don't do that in any language. We should not do this, that change a control, change a data type, and now change its name everywhere, right? But that's the convention. In Visual Basic also, whenever you declare an integer variable, the word integer is put at the end of it. So that when you're reading code, you're saying X integer. Oh, this is an integer. Now, how does that help? Now, if I change my integer to real number for whatever reason, to a float, now I have to change it, call it X float everywhere in my code. That's more work. We don't name something according to its type. We name something according to its functionality. I don't want to say name string. Name will do. I don't want to call it marks integer. Marks will do. And I like that convention. That why are we attaching the name of the control with the variable name? Because then if I change it to something else for whatever reason, integers can be changed to floating numbers. Why not, right? Then I have to go and look in my code and then change it everywhere. But there are very few people with this last coding convention where it says don't put anything. So I'll stick with what the book does because I'm following the book, and you will see everywhere either they are using the word form or form before or after the name or the abbreviation FRM. And to be very truthful, you have to find these abbreviations. Sometimes you don't find them. FRM is simple, LBL for label is simple, TXT for text is simple. But I couldn't find something for mask text box. I had to make up my own. So it's all over the place. So stick to whatever you want. If you like the word form, if you want to use form in the beginning or at the end, it's up to you. I'm going to use the 3-letter abbreviation for 2 reasons. One, because I'm following a textbook and the textbook follows it. And it's a known convention. There's nothing wrong in it. It's not wrong. And 2, what you will see is an IntelliSense. What is IntelliSense? Something that Java also helps you. You start to type and it gives you a list from which you can choose. Now, if I say FRM, it will all show me all my form controls together. Then I can choose the one I want. So forms will come together, texts will come together. So it's easy to choose. So IntelliSense is easy to work with. What is IntelliSense? It's like in any IDE, when you start typing, it gives you a list from the list to look up. You don't have to type the whole thing. You can choose from it. So it kind of makes it easy to use IntelliSense. It's called IntelliSense in Visual Studio. So those are the 2 reasons. 1, using IntelliSense is easier. 2, the book follows it. So I have to stick to something, right? So I'll stick to this. So another book that we were using a couple of years back used the word form at the end of it. At that point of time, I also went with form. So choose whatever you want. It would be nice if you can choose the same convention that I'm doing. Because when I write my assignments, I'll be saying, name your control this. And I'll be using my convention. So that way we are talking the same language. And again, if you go to a company, if you work somewhere, they may say, oh, we are going to use the 3-lettered one. Or they may say, no, we are going to use the word form. Or they may say, we are not going to use anything at all. So follow the convention that the company uses. So in this class, I'm going to stick to this convention. All my assignments will stick to this convention. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But all 3 are out there. If you go and read about naming conventions for controls, we are talking about controls, not variables or not method names. We are talking about controls. These are called controls, right? Buttons and forms, they are called controls. We are talking about conventions. There is no one convention out there. Like I've scratched my head for the last 3 years. I can't find one. So I'll stick with FRM because IntelliSense, it makes it a little easier in IntelliSense. And 2, as I said, I use the book. Now I'm going to call my program Hello World. That's like naming your file hello world.java. That's a normal name. How did I choose that name? Something that reflects what I'll do in my code. So if you were writing something for, you were creating a calculator, you would call it calculator.cs. If you were doing something like a bank application, you would call it form bank something dot whatever, right? So that name, hello world or calculator or whatever, should be a good name, right? And it follows, if you notice, it just follows Pascal naming convention like Java. First letter of every word is capitalized. I haven't said H small, it's Pascal naming convention. Like Java classes, same convention here. Class names should be all Pascal naming. The word form in front of it makes it camel case, but that form is not related to the name in a sense. So choose whatever you like. Use FRM if you like. Use the whole word form and then use a capital F. That's how it is done. At the front, you can call it form hello world, or you can call it hello world form.cs. But use one convention. I'll stick to this. All my assignments will stick to this. So you better stick to it, then you won't have to change it for me. Okay, so that's my one thing. Do an enter and it will ask you, do I change it everywhere? And say, yeah, change it everywhere. You will say where everywhere. Notice it's showing up in properties also here. It is showing up in your code also here. It will change it everywhere. And there, it changes it everywhere. So now your class is called form hello world, and this means extends. Right? Colon in C# means extends. So your form is extending your form hello world is extending the form class. That's what it is doing. And form extends the object class. There is also an object class in C# like there is in Java. Okay, the father of all classes is still is in C# is also called object. They tried to keep it very closely related to Java. C# came after Java. So there is my form, and it has a constructor, a default constructor, and this default constructor is not empty. See, the default constructor is not empty. The default constructor is calling a method called initialize component, and this method initialize component is present in the designer file. And if you kind of look at it like a layman, even as a layman, all it is doing is it is creating a component, a container. It is giving it a particular font, and all you do is you kind of go here, you can do a right click. It helps to look at its definition or go to the definition. So if you say go to definition, a separate window will open up and you can see more of it. So it tells you what it is. It's a class, right? Container is a class. So it's always a good idea to kind of look at these default things, though you will never even pay attention. These things are put for us by default, right? So this is what it does. And I would recommend that since you're new to it, you kind of go here and you always look at it. This is an enumerated type. Now, what is an enumerated type? An enumerated type is a type that has constants defined in it. So there is a constant called font, and dot font is using the dot font component, whatever it is. You can always go and look at it. But this is an enumerated data type. We'll talk about enumerated data type in future, but an enumerated data type is like there is an enumerated data type in Java. Have you done it in Java, enumerated data type? It just is a collection of constants. And what is the use? Readability. So instead of using words like 0 for Sunday, 1 for Monday, 2 for Tuesday, you can call them Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, weekdays, and then use in your code, instead of using 0, 1, 2, you can use Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so on. It makes it more readable. Right? That's the use of enumerated constants. They are constants and they're enumerated. Enumerated means gives it a meaning. Enumeration is what it is in English. So this class autoscale is an enumerated data type, which means this font is a constant inside it. Notice how it has equal to 1. So that's the constant defined inside it. And what does it say? It says controls scale relative to the dimensions of the font the classes are using, right? Which means if you use something big, it will, like if you use a bigger font, the window will show it will go bigger. If you use a smaller font, the window will go smaller size. That's what it is scaling. So I would recommend looking at it. You don't have to memorize anything, but as a programmer, you should just know what is happening. And it has a text called form1. So this is the initialize component method that runs. This is what has happened. And where is it is being called from form1 constructor. And from where is that form1 being called? Here. This is what happens when you run your application. So program.cs is the code that runs. That code is creating an object of your form hello world. And how new? calls the constructor, and the constructor calls initialize component. The initialize component creates that form for you, and zoom, it comes up on the screen.
So I'm just curious that which is the default, like the form, like it is form 1 or it's form?
Come again, Devang. What are you asking?
The program.cs.
In the program, oh, this it was called form 1. Remember, I changed its name. Yeah. By default, it was form 1.
So why in the prompt, yeah, it's like
this is saying extends form. Form is already a class in Java in C#. What is the name of your form? Here, this is the name of your form. Form 1. That's what it does. Visual Studio goes form 1, form 2, form 3. Button 1, button 2, button 3. That's how it names its controls. Form is a class in the system dot. It is a class in this namespace called system.windows.forms. So this is the name of your package. Inside that package is a class called form, and your form is extending that class. Make sense? So I know forms and form is a little confusing, but that's what it is. So the package is called, so we don't call it package, we call it namespace. In C# we call it namespaces. So the namespace is called system.windows.forms. Inside that namespace is a class called form, and you will notice they're all capital, so it's easy to kind of make sense. And then you are creating a form called form hello world that extends from that class. Okay, this is what has happened, and it automatically runs for you. So one job done. Now our aim is, so you know what's going on behind. I won't repeat this again because it's the same thing everywhere. You will have a program.cs. Program.cs will have a main. Main will create an object of your form and run it, right? So you have a class called application. See, there it is. Class Windows Forms application provides static methods and properties to manage an application. And there is a run method in it. There is the run method. It takes the name of a form. There are two overloads. Whenever you want to see the overload, you can click on, or I think you can go next. I forget, how do you, I forget. I think it will come when you start typing, it shows you which one are you on. So it says there are two overloads. There are two overloads means run has two more overload methods, right? And this one is only asking you for the name of the form. Begins running a standard application message loop on the current thread and makes the specified form visible. That's exactly what is happening, right? That's exactly what is happening. Your form becomes visible, and it throws an exception called invalid operation exception, right? So it's just like reading Java docs. Same thing. It's just like reading Java docs. Okay. So you have to know what is happening. There is no magic happening. When you go start, mine is not working, so I'm doing it without debugging. But you go start. From start, it calls program.cs. Program.cs calls inside program.cs is main. Main is creating an object of new form. The new form has a constructor. The constructor is calling initialize component, and initialize component is creating your form, and it becomes visible. This story is always the same. So we won't go back to this story, right? Now let's come to the actual thing. And I'm thinking, where did I make that change now? I have to put it somewhere. I had to Google it, and I thought it was done, and now again, I can't do it. Oh, well, I'll look it up again. For now, I'll work without this. You should not be saying start without debugging. Start without debugging means don't debug my code. That's not what you want to do. You always want to debug your code, right? So for now, I'll do it, and I forget where they made me make those changes, which is strange that they should maybe here somewhere, application. It should just stay. It's my laptop. It should not go away from here, but something is not right. And I don't want to. Okay, if you get into it, if you hear something here, oh, native code debugging, but that should stay. These properties should stay. Maybe I have to do it for every project I create. It's not, this is for every project. So if you find any problem in your Visual 2017, please Google, right? Because you may, like, this is a problem that I have never encountered in any Visual Studios I've used till now. And I don't want to do it without debugging. So I had to find the solution, and that's the solution. Now I can't find a solution for whatever reason. I still cannot. I do not know why my tool, in my tools, why my import and export settings are not working. I have no clue. I've Googled it, nothing, no help. So the only option is uninstall 2017 and install it again, and I don't want to do that option, right? Okay. So if you find some problem, Ask me. If I have seen it before, I'll let you know. But if I haven't seen it before, I'm in the same boat as you are. Google it. There's no other way. Like, and you will find that people have encountered problems. The same problem that I'm having with debugging, other people have encountered it too. So sit with it. They were saying something about import export settings, but I didn't find a solution. Okay. Okay. Now let's open up the form you have. Bring it on the screen. Okay. Now let's talk about it. Right. So this is your form that will come up on the screen when your program starts. Right. First, we changed the name of the class. We didn't want to call it form1. It's not a good name anyway. I called it hello world because I'm going to create a program that will say hello world on screen, not on screen, in my form, right? 2, I don't want this text here. This is looking so odd. It shouldn't be called hello, even form1 here. How do you change it? Now, when you click on this form, please make it active. You will see that there is a properties window that comes up on the right hand side. If you don't have this properties window, all you have to go is say view, and there should be a properties window here, and click on it and it will come up. Right? So at all time when I'm doing something, I'll have my solution explorer open. I'll have my team explorer open just because I'll be putting changes on GitHub. Right? I don't know what I did. I changed some settings. Right? So it's going on GitHub always, right? Sync to sync now. Sync. So if you want to put your own work on GitHub, this is all you have to do. You have to get the Git Team Explorer window open, and then you will find that you can set up a local repository on your GitHub, wherever it is, and then push it, keep pushing it. It's very easy from Visual Studio. It's very easy. So I am pushing this. So if you go to github.com and look for me, Anju Chawla, you will find that I have public repositories there, and your repository is by the name that kind of works for you. So your repository right now is called F2017 Rad Tuesday-Lesson1. That's how I'll kind of name them. So that way it's easy to find. And you will also find Rad Thursday because their repositories are also going there. Okay, so you'll always find this work. So anytime you're kind of left behind while we are working, give me a shout, I'll put it and then you can download it. Okay, so you're never behind me, you're with me always. Okay, now let's start doing this. So my first job will be, you don't know what you will put in the form, but an easy way of changing the size of the form is like this. There are two ways. One, this is an easy way, right? You have handles. Or two, please look, there is a property here called size. Do you notice there is a property here called size in the properties window? You can always go and change it here. So 678, 510 says you have 678 pixels on this and 510 on this. It's easy to read. Now, what are you seeing in this window on the right-hand side? Let me explain what you're seeing. For this form, which is basically extending the form class, these are called properties. If you notice in the first box, it will say categorized. If you click on that box, you will see the properties by category: appearance, behavior, data, design. I prefer to go alphabetical because I think I'm in the habit of doing that from day one. You can choose whatever you like. So if I have to look for a property, what are properties? Properties are instance variables. Can you relate it? Properties are like instance variables of your object. So this form has a property or an instance variable called size. It has a property called, an easy one, I'll tell you, the maximize box, a minimize box, startup location, and so on. It has, these are its properties, right? This form has some events. If you go on the next one, here you see this events, the kind of a lightning sign. These are all the events that are associated with your form. That means the most common one will be highlighted. So what is form load? What is this event called load? This means what do you want to do when the form is loaded on the screen? So if you want to do something like, you'll say, what do I want to do? We'll learn what we want to do. Maybe we want to do some default settings. We want to make some radio buttons disabled. We want to hide a particular control. We'll do all that in load. Right? You could do much more in load, but whatever I can do with the properties, I'll do with the properties. I'll leave the minimum to the code. So these are the events that are with the form. There is a long list. What happens when the form is closed? So there will be event called closed or something, or closing, or form closing or something, I think it is called. What happens when a form gets deactivated? That means you have minimized it. So what are events? Events are those, what can I say, characteristics with an object that the user will kind of invoke to do something. So when I minimize a form, I have deactivated the form. So if you want to do something when a form is deactivated, you will write an event handler for this deactivate event, and whatever you write in that code in that handler will happen when you deactivate. There is another event called activated. So when you kind of click on it and it activates again, what do you want to do? So these are just event handlers, and you code those event handlers. What do I want to do when this event happens on my control? So there is a long list. There is a long list of events with every control. The most common one will usually be highlighted because the load is the most common one. Okay. Now, there are other properties. You just saw a size property. So let's come back to properties again. And you can choose categorized or alphabetical, whatever makes sense to you. Let's change this text property. Let's change it from form1 to hello world. What will happen? Your property, the hello world text has changed. So you've changed the text property. So it is something like this. Form, the name of your form hello world dot text is equal to hello world now. Where is this change occurring? Let me show it to you. Let's save this. I'll show you where this change has occurred. See, here is where that change has occurred. What did you do? You gave it a name. You changed its text property. And I don't know what resume layout means, but we can always, it's giving it a false. So you can always bring your mouse over it. Bool perform layout plus one resumes usual layout logic, optionally forcing an immediate layout of pending. Nothing to do with our coding. Right? You can always look at it and see something that makes sense to me. So any change that you do on the form is being done in the designer.cs for you automatically. So now if you wanted, you could code it here. You could have written this statement, this dot text is equal to hello world. What is this? The current object. What is your current object? Form hello world dot. Same object oriented programming, same thing. Name of the object dot name of the method or property. Here we kind of work. These are all private properties. So it is saying this dot text is equal to hello world. That's what you've done. You changed the size. Notice how the size has changed. It has, I mean, this is a little more complicated, but it has created a new size object of 660 into 468. So that's the size you gave to your form. So therefore I said you will hardly ever come to the designer file because you don't want to bother with it because you can do everything by drop and dragging. But you should know that this is what is happening on the my designer file, which means you can code this. You can just come and code here. If I wanted to do something here, I would just come here and code it. This dot, there is a property called start position. Where do you want to start? I can say center screen and it will work. So you can either make changes in the designer.cs file, not recommended at all, or you should be making changes in your form, the GUI, which is highly recommended. So don't come and touch this file or play with this file if you don't have to. You will need to, I will tell you when, but not now. So stick to this. Stick to this form. Let's come back here. Let's come back. What else would I like to do? Right now, this is what is happening. So I'll run it again for you. Now I'm okay with start because I changed my properties. Hopefully I'll be okay. I'll have to do this every time. And if you're having this problem, notice how it has taken a default position towards the left of the screen. If you would like it to start in the center of the screen, we can make it do that. Notice how minimize and maximize buttons are working. If you want to disable them, we can disable them. You'll say, why? Because if a form is made of this size and you've put things on the form that look good this way, when you maximize it, they will look awful because they don't scale, right? They don't scale at all. So you don't want, once you've created your application, you don't want anybody to change the size of your window. You can do that. Minimize is not usually a problem because minimize is something that doesn't affect the appearance, but maximize does affect the appearance. So let's see how we can do that. Usually people will keep the cross, and some people don't even like this line at all. They don't even like this bar at all. They remove the whole bar. You can remove the whole bar, right? Or the other thing you can do is you don't even want to let the user do this also. Same problem. Your form will look untidy. So let's see how to change all these properties. So come back to your form. We'll go one by one. How do I start a form to come at this in the center of the screen? There is a property called start position. There it is. And if you notice, the default is Windows default location. I'll go center screen. There is a center screen and a center parent. The parent is more useful when you are basically doing inheritance, right? There are forms and forms. One form is you want one form to come in the middle of its parent form. To me, I just have a form. You could use either and both of them will work. Who's the parent of my form? The Windows operating system, right? That form. So Either one will work for me, but I don't have to use center parent. I use center screen. What is the difference? This is the difference. Notice where it will come now. There, center of the screen. You've changed a property. And that will also reflect where? Automatically, where will it reflect? It will reflect here. See, here is the property that got changed. Dot center screen. The start position property got changed and it was assigned the value center screen. Why the whole thing? Because it's not using, it is using, as in Java, you don't have to put import. You can always say java.util.arraylist.this. We don't do that. It's not something we do. And here we don't bother because the designer code is not being generated by us. So we don't even bother. We say, oh, it's writing it. I'm not writing it. So why should I bother? But in my own code, notice how I have done my usings. So I don't want to say system.windows.forms.form. I want to just use form here. And therefore you do the imports or the using. Okay, so one job done. That was easy, right? That was easy. Let's come back to design. 2, how do I disable this maximize button? These are called maximize buttons. There is a property called maximize box. So come to the property called maximize box. So therefore, since I know the names of the properties, I find alphabetically makes more sense to me. You will get used to it. Get used to whatever you like. If you like the category wise, go that way. If you like it alphabetically, go this way. Go to maximize and change it from true to false. So what are you saying? You are saying my maximize box is disabled now. It won't work. Right? And I don't want the user to change the size of my form. Right? I want my border to be fixed. The property is called form border style. Am I right? No. What else could it be called? Font. It has to do with something with border. The name isn't coming. It has properties of. Oh, there it is. Form border style. There it is. It is something border style. There it is. I'll make it fixed single. What will this do? The user cannot change. You won't have those resizable handles anymore when you run the code. Not here. I'm not talking here. Here you can do whatever you like. This is you creating it. Right? When you execute it, when it is executed, see the options now. 1, it will come in the center of the screen. 2, maximize button is disabled. 3, there are no form handles. I don't have handles here. So these properties have been changed. I changed the name. I changed the text. I changed maximize box to false, and I changed my form border style to fixed size. These are the changes I've done. I've changed the properties of my form. I could have done it using code in designer file. I don't want to do that. Don't do that. It's too much work. It's useless. You're not gaining anything out of it. You're not learning anything out of this. Okay, now let's go to the next. What do I want to do? Now I want to put controls on my form. I want to put the message hello world, but not just hello world. I want to do a few more things. Now we'll start using these controls. Now there are two options. You can use the all Windows forms and you can keep it open. And then if you know which control you want, you can double click on it. I usually prefer because they have names. If I need menus or toolbars, I'll choose this one. If I need containers, I'll choose this one. If I need common controls, I'll choose this one. I leave it to you, whatever makes sense to you. I'll go to common controls and I'm going to take a control called label. So there is a class called label, right? It is a component, not a container. The difference between component and container can contain something inside it. Form is a container because you can put things inside it. You can put other components inside it, okay? Now double click on label once. There are two ways. You can double click on it and it will come here, or you can choose it and then you can have it here. So you can click once on the control, once on the form, or you can double click it. So what have I done? I've taken two objects. One is called label 1. Notice that's its default name. The other one is called label 2. Two objects of which class? The label class. I've created two objects of the label class. Now these are objects. So objects will have properties. Like form was an object, it had properties. So now let's do a few things. Now the few things that I want you to kind of follow. One, we'll name it. We'll call it LBL is the short form I'm using for label. Okay, LBL for label. 3. I'm sticking with the 3 alphabets, 3 abbreviation, 3-letter abbreviation. And since this is my heading, I'll call it label heading. So the name of my variable is heading. Okay, that's what I've called my variable. It's an instance variable. Property is an instance variable, kind of, if you can relate it. So I've called this object label heading. That's what I've called it, right? What do you want the text inside it? You don't want label 1 inside it. Let's say something like welcome. There it is. I've changed the text to welcome. Usually you want your headings to look bigger and bold. So choose that. I'm still on that. Go to its property called font. And it has a few. The easy way would be, I'll tell you the easy way. Just click on this ellipse here and it will be more familiar. A dialog box will come up. So you want to make it bold. You want to make it of size 14. And you say, okay, this is what happens to your. So you've changed the property. You've changed the font property of your label. Easy. Like I'm just playing with properties from the properties window. There are many there. And again, I would highly recommend to go through these properties and see what happens with them. Now it's not, if you try, you can try to kind of move it in the middle, but we are not always good at moving things. There is an easy way of doing it. Select your label. If you don't have these buttons, I have these buttons because I've already done it with the other section. Choose a button from here. Click on this and say add or remove buttons and choose the button called center horizontally and center vertically if it is not in your toolbar. It most probably will not be in your toolbar. There are other buttons there. They're all grayed out because they don't apply to my label. Choose these buttons center horizontally and center vertically. And once you do this, you will notice that they appear here and if you choose your control, they become active. So you can center it horizontally, and that's what I'll do. There, it's centered. Move it anywhere. If you say center horizontally, it will come in the center horizontally. If you say vertically, it will move vertically. Right? So that's not what I want, but anyway. Also notice there is something called bring to front and take it to the back. Now there is no front or back here. It's not behind anything. It's in the front. So that's how your heading should look. So every form that you create for me must have a heading. Forms without headings make no sense. I'll say fill up this form. You'll say, what is it about? If it has a heading, mark change form, apply for scholarship, you know what the form is about. So headings are important. I want all your forms to have headings, right? So it has a good name that tells me that I'm going to do something with Hello World. I could have called it Hello World here also. You could have called it welcome message, but don't call it Anju. Like it doesn't make sense. Give it a good heading. Make it a bold, make it of a bigger size, put it in the center. It doesn't even take a minute. Now, what is this label 2 that I created? And I gave it a name also. Remember, I gave it a name, label headings. Usually with labels, I will not bother because I don't use them in my coding. Nowhere in my coding will I say, change the heading from welcome to hello world. So you don't use them. If you don't use them in your coding, you don't have to give them names. But I want you to get good habits to start with. I'm going to change the name of this label to label name. I'm going to put my name here. If for whatever reason you take its text property and remove it and then kind of come back, you can't even see that label. You'll say, oh, where did that label go? How do I search for it? Where did it go? Because the label does not have a border by default. It takes the size of whatever you put in it. So what did you put in that label? Blank. So what was its size? 0, nothing. Now you'll say, oh God, I lost it. What do I do? Do I pick up another one? No. If you come to the form again and you kind of click on this, you will see all that you've added to your form is right here. Right? So you added a label heading. If you click on it, that's your label heading. The one that you lost or is invisible is here, is right here. So now I would like to, you can make this mistakes. I mean, you were just typing and you forgot to type something and now I'll put my name in there. I'll put my name. So I always want to see your name on your form so that I can recognize who you are when I come to market, because it will take me time to learn your names, to relearn your names, right? Now, since this is programmed by kind of stuff. Okay, so again, just to make it a little more stand out, I'll kind of go bold italics and I'll go, I don't know, 8 should be good. That is how it stands. So to begin with, change the name of the class. .cs is your class. Change the text of your form. Put it in the center. Remove the maximize button till you really have a need to maximize it. Change the border style to fixed because I don't want it to move. If I don't, then it will look untidy, right? Because if users are, it doesn't scale automatically. So there is nothing else we can do. And then always have a heading of the form to tell me what the form does. And then have your name on the right-hand side corner or left or wherever. I want to see your name. right? Those are things that are already in your common instructions, but if you do them, you're fine. Now, I want you to pick up another label. The use of a label, can you kind of make an educated guess? The use of labels, you put something in it which is there. It's like a label, the normal English word label. It's not a text input box. It's not an input box. You can't input anything in a label. Labels are usually to show something, show messages. So I've used two labels. Now I'm creating a third label. I'm going to call it label message. This is where my message will occur, when it occurs. Right? I don't want any text in it, but because its size, I want to take care of its size. There is a property called auto size. Please make it false. What you're saying is the size is not automatic. You'll say, what is automatic? The welcome, look at the size of the welcome label around it. That's its size. Look at the size of Anju Chawla, whatever is inside it. Look at the size of label 1, what is inside it. But now, since I said auto size is false, I can give it whatever size I want. So if I want my message to come somewhere here, I've kind of created a box for myself. That's what I'm doing, because I want to show a message here. I want to show hello world here when the user clicks a button. Just not hello world. I want to only show hello world when the user clicks a button. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Now I don't want this text inside it, so I'll remove the word text from the label 1 from it. Right? And the label is gone. But as soon as you move away, even the border is gone. You'll say, oh, did I lose it again? So now to give it a border, there is a property called border style. And we'll make it fixed single. Now it looks like this. So labels are used for output. Text boxes are used for input. In the long run, we will stick to text boxes because using labels for output is more work. Why? I have to change its auto size property. I have to give it a border so that I can see it, so that it looks like a box. After a couple of classes, I'll start using text boxes for output also. And what I'll do with my text boxes, I'll say nobody can type into it. It is only a read-only text box. That will save me this extra work. But to begin with, this is what I do. So I've created a label, and this label has a name called label message. Keep in mind, label message is what you called it. If you give it a good name, you will remember it. And then I've given it a border, and I've made it auto size property as false. This is what I've done. Now when I run it, it will exactly whatever you've done in the form will appear on your form. Right? And whatever you've done here, for your information, is being added here. See, you created, these were your instance variables you created on your form. You created a label, message, a label heading, a label name, of what type? Of label type, and these are your instance variables of on your form. Instance variables of your class called form hello world.cs. Just like Java, C# places it at the bottom. In Java, you usually place it at the top. Position doesn't matter. You can place it anywhere in your code, because remember, it's encapsulation, data and methods together. You can shake a capsule and it still remains inside it. So it's not necessary where you place it. Instance variables can be placed anywhere. Their scope is the whole class, top to bottom. This is not local variables. These are class variables, okay? They belong to instance. And whatever you did, all labels that you created, they all come here. See, whatever you've done is all going into your initialize component method. Here is your initial. See, it's increasing in size. You created a new object of type label. It created a new statement for you. When you double clicked, you created a label object. You created another label object. You created another label object. Remember, you created 3 layer object. Then you gave it auto size was true by default. You gave it a font. You gave it a location. You gave it a name. You gave it a size. You gave, now tab index we haven't done, so I'll talk about what tab index is. And you gave it a text, welcome. It did the same thing for the second label, label name, property true, and so on and so forth. Then you did something with your message. You gave it a border style. And border style is again an enumerated data type. Therefore, you go dot fixed single. Fixed single means give it a fixed single. It will have a value 1, 0, 1, 2 are its default values. But you don't want to say dot 1, because dot 1 doesn't make sense, but dot fixed single makes sense. See, readability improves with enumeration data types. If they hadn't created this style called fixed single, I would have to say border style dot 1. Doesn't make sense to you, like it's not making sense. But if I say border style dot fixed single, oh, it's making sense. So enumerated data type, as the name suggests, gives names to constants And you can use those names as constants in your code. And they make sense, right? They make sense. So it's for readability. Enumerated constants are always for readability. They improve your readability. So this is what is happening. Okay, now let's come back to my design. Now I want you to put a few buttons on this form, right? So take your button object, or your button class, take 2 of them. I definitely need 2. I'm going one by one. Notice how, do you see this blue line? This blue line helps you to place it, right? There is a blue and there is a pink also. I'll show you the pink one in a minute. The pink one, there it is. The pink one kind of matches the text on the same line. The blue one matches the borders, right? So if how do I want to place this? If I can place it here, but if I want to place it kind of the same position, match it like this. So now they will be placed in the same position. You don't want to place one button here and one button here. It looks untidy. And you don't want to play hit and trial with it. You don't have all day doing all this nonsense, but there is an easy way. You can kind of go like this, and here you've done what? You've kind of matched the text. So text will appear on the same position. There, I've placed my buttons. You want to increase the size of the, oh, I moved it from here. I'm kind of aligning it with the border here and aligning it with the border. You don't have to. You could say, oh no, I don't want to align them. I want to kind of put them together, like somewhere here. Yeah, of course you can do that. Nothing stops you. If you want to do with some buttons, something together, like what? Like this. I want to change their size. You can choose multiple controls together, and that helps you to do the job once, and it will do it for all your all your controls. I could have done it separately, but this was easy. So you can choose more than one controls together, and when you choose more than one controls together, you can work with them together. I changed the size. See, this is how I was changing the size. I know I will need a bigger button, so I kind of gave it this size. And then click out, and they will both be unselected. So I've created 2 button objects. And as soon as you do this, you will notice it will come here. It will add 2 new instance variables to your code. And I haven't done anything with it yet, but I will. Right? And what you do here will be reflected here. Okay, what do you want to do here? I don't want to see this button 1 on it. I want to give it a good name. I want to give good text. Okay, so let's start with button 1. And while you are at the same property, it helps to kind of do it together. Okay, what do you want to call this button? Using my conventions, BTN for button, the 3 abbreviation for button, and I'll call it English. Why? Because on this button, when the user clicks this button, English, the message hello world will come in English. I've called it English. I've called it English. I've called it button English, but I want to change the text also. Before I change the text, I'll go to the second button, because if I do this, I'm at the same property. It's much easier to change it. So change the same property together. You can choose whatever language. I'll do Spanish because I know what it is called in Spanish. You can choose whatever language. So I'm creating 2 buttons. One I've called button English. One I've called button Spanish, right? And in button, this I've changed the names only, not the text. Only the names. And since I'm in the same property, I kind of did it together. Now go to its text and change it to Spanish. So now Spanish will appear on the button. So the text property changes text. The name property changes the name of the object. And please don't leave any default names. You'll lose marks. I don't want you to call your controls button 1, label 1, radio button 1. I have no clue. I'm not going to search what those buttons are. So change the name, change the text. Plus, let me also tell you something. Try to put an and in front of S, the ampersand sign. Just do it for me. I'll tell you what happens with that. Put an and in front of S. You can put it in front of any of the letters. I'm putting it in front of S. This is what happens. Spanish comes on the button and S is underlined. Now you can use your keyboard, Alt S, to do it, to make it work. Those are called shorthand keys, also called hotkeys. They're for keyboard access. So people who can't work with the mouse, you can use this control or Alt S, I think. Alt S to make it work. So you can click on the button. You can do Alt S on the button. Both mean the same thing, right? And what do you want to do? You want to print the message hello world in Spanish in that label message box. This is what you want to do. So you are going to create an event handler for your button, what will it handle? It will handle the click event And what do you want to do when the user clicks on it is what you will code inside that event handler. Is it making sense? Are we okay? Okay, at least I see one red. Thank you. On the button 2, please do the same thing. Change the text to English and make one of the letters the hotkey, whichever you want. I'm just making it E because it's my first one and I haven't used anything else. Right, so I'm going E. So just place the ampersand sign in front of the letter you want to make the access key. If you wanted to make G, put it in front of G and G. If you wanted to make H, make it and H. Of course, you won't create the same keyboard access key for more than one controls. That would be foolish. You don't want to call them. I mean, one alt should only work one way. You can do it. I mean, it does not make sense. So each one of them has one particular shorthand key, right? This is a problem with Visual Basic. The shorthand keys don't come up till you press the alt key. So when you press the alt key, they start to show up. So if you wanted to do an F, you could either click on the button and notice how these have all shorthand keys and none of them are the same. Again, an alt. It's a bug and it has been there for years. I don't know why they don't like debug it, but anyway, right? So notice F has a shorthand key. You can't use F anywhere else. How can you? I mean, you can't have two buttons or two menu items with the same. These are menu items, right? So this is, I've just created this. I've created a shorthand key of S for my Spanish button and E for my English button. Now I'm not sure if they are in the center. So I can select them and I can say center horizontally. There, they were not in the center of the form. They were in the center, but they're not. So don't always say, oh, they are. Do this. It doesn't even take a nanosecond. And all this will carry marks because what is it? It's your interface. If your interface is untidy, how are you expecting me to give you marks for it? So interface will have its own marks and coding will have its own marks. And I don't want untidy interfaces, please. Don't create a big form where you only have 5 controls. Don't create a small form where I can't even read the title. Give me a form of an appropriate size. Like if I try to change the form size of this form to this, that's really silly. Right? Don't give me all this. So I'm expecting that you have enough experience with forms to create a good form. Right? So just make it a little neat. So not too big, not too small, the correct size is what you need. So that I can at least read everything. Sometimes I've noticed in some students, I can't even read this. They make cute forms. They're called cute forms. They make small forms, but sometimes you can't even read what they have here in the heading. That's really bad. So I could decrease the size of this form a little, but it doesn't look too big to me right now. But that's what it is. Nothing will work right now. No button is working. Nothing will work. But we will make it work. I haven't finished my interface yet. My first job will be to finish the interface. Now I also want you to take 3 more buttons. Kind of place them somewhere here. Right? Place them somewhere here. I'll tell you what they are for. One is for clear, one is for exit, and one is for printing my form. Oh, I don't need the print form. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Give me a minute. Okay. So again, I'll just take all of these 3 together. Oh, you know what? I should have done all 5 together. But anyway, they're not of the same size, but I'll find out what the size of this one is. 5, or no, not your location, your size. Where are you, size? There it is. 103 by 44 is what is the size of Spanish and English. I forget again. 103.44. Okay, so let's try to make the same. 103.44. So a little bigger. Oh, 109, 103 and 44. See, that's what the problem is. If I had done them together, I wouldn't be struggling with this one. Yeah, that would be much better. There. 103 and 44. Just so that they all look the same. That's the whole thing. They all look the same. So hopefully I've matched this here. I've matched this. So the blue lines and the pink lines will help me. And here I'll say make horizontal spacing equal. So between them, I'll say make the spacing equal. So they'll have the same space between them. I'm not saying place horizontally in the center. I've already put where I wanted them. I've matched them with my message label. Now I'm saying between them, the spacing should be equal. So I've used this button. This button was, you select it and then you choose this button. One says make vertical spacing equal and one says make horizontal spacing equal. So notice there are 3 buttons. They have the same spacing between them, all for neatness, because it is a big thing. What comes up is a big thing. Now let me put code on. Now let me again start naming them. Oh, out of it here. So when you select all 3 together, okay, let's start naming them. I want to call this button clear. Right? Button, I'm naming them first. I'm calling this button clear. Here, this one I am calling button print. And this one I should be naming them first. That way it will be easy for you, right? And this one I'll call button exit. Okay, so button exit has text. Exit X is the shorthand form. Because usually for exit, X is the shorthand form. So go E, then go and exit. Okay. This button, what was it? It was the print form. So let's call it print form. We can go, print form usually has P as the shorthand key. Oh, I may be short of space here. No, it's fine, print form. And this one, I want to call, this was for clear. So I'll call it clear. You can make whatever is the shorthand key. I'm just showing you that I can make whatever, the first one here. So this is what I've called my, but I've called them clear button, print button, and exit button. I've called it English button, Spanish button, right? So button English, button Spanish, button clear, button print, and button exit. That's what I've called them. And these are its text properties. And all the text properties have a shorthand key. They're also called hotkeys or keyboard access keys, whatever you would like to call them. There is another property actually. When I see it, I will be able to maybe, it will come back. When it does, I'll tell you. I was thinking of another property. It's called key, K. No, I'm at the wrong place. Anyway, here, notice something else. If you notice, there is a text align property also. Right now, and I like it that way, but right now my text is in the middle. That's how it looks neat, right? If you want to change it, you could, but it will look very silly. But you could do this if you wanted. So this is text align property. So some properties are like, they are named very easy to kind of remember. Sometimes you have to think about it. I'm looking for something and I can't recollect it and I can't see it. And anytime you bring your mouse to a property and select it, you will notice it will tell you something here. The alignment of the text that will be displayed on the control. So you'll get used to it. We'll talk about tab stop in a minute, right? Give me a minute. My form is now ready. None of it works. Like none of the button works, but my form is now ready. This is what I want to do. When I click on the English button, I want hello world to appear in that label message. When I click, guys, please bear with me another 3 minutes. When I click on Spanish, I want the hello world in Spanish written there. Hello, whatever it is called. When I do clear, when I click on the clear button, I want that message to be cleared. When I say print form, I want this form to be printed for me. You can put it on the printer. You can redirect it to the printer, or you can redirect it to a file, or you can only do a preview of it. There are 3 things you can do. Print to a file, print preview, print to the printer. We will stick to print preview because we don't want things to go to the printer. And exit will work the same way as your cross. When the user clicks on the exit button, the form will close. So now my next job is to make these event handlers for these controls. And the event handlers, again, each of this button, I've only used 5, all of them are buttons. You will see if you click on the events, there is a long list of events with buttons. But I will be interested in the click event because that's the most common one. You can have a click, you can have, like there's so many, you can have a double click also if I'm not mistaken. No, it's for something else. You can drag over, you can enter it. Enter means you're just focusing on it. You've just brought your mouse on it, right? So there's so many events. The easiest one, or no, not the easiest one, the most common one with the button is the click event. What happens when the user clicks on it, right? Now, before I leave, the tab property. Take your, yes, they were.
So the event handlers for the button and the radio would be different?
They are mostly the same, but they're called the same so that you can kind of work with them. There it will be called something like selected. You have to put your code. What do you want to do with it, right? You have to put your code. Right now, please select your form, go to view and go to tab order. The tab order shows you how When you use your tab key, where will it go? So it will go from 0 to 1 to 2. Now labels don't take part in tabs at all. Have you ever seen tabs going to labels? No, but tabs do go from button to button. So this is how it will dance, from English to Spanish to clear to print form to exit. Just because they are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by default. It's just that how I chose them, but that doesn't mean yours will always be in order. We will learn how to change them in order. But this is the tab order I was talking about when you saw that property called tab order, right? So these tab orders will appear, and there is a property called tab stop. You are saying whether the tab should stop on it or not. There is no property of tab stop for labels. Labels don't have the tab stop property. To remove this, go back to view and again go and check. This is the easy way of changing order. You'll say, what if I want to change the order? This is what you do. See what you do. Start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it really doesn't matter. 5, 6, and 7 really doesn't matter. Labels are kind of useless. They are like, they don't do anyone. So now I have set my tabs to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All I did was click on it. Wherever I wanted to start, I started. I clicked. It became 0. Wherever I wanted to click next, I clicked on it. It became 1. Now, once you have this, I'll show you how it works. And go back to tab order. And just see the property. There is a property called tab order and tab stop. Oh, that's strange. Okay, properties. There you are. Sorry. So you'll see that there is a property called tab index. I gave it a 5. This has 5. This has 0. Remember it? I gave it a 0. There it is. So tab index and tab stop are properties that are related. Labels will never have tab stop property. There is no tab stop. But you can always make this tab stop as false and it will not stop on that button. The tab will not take you to that button. Right? So that's tab stop property. I don't want to make it true. Now let's see how it works. Run it for me. Run it if you've created it. And use your tab key, okay? Notice how tab is going. Where did it start? Why is English highlighted? Because tab 0 was at English. Okay, from English, where will it go? To Spanish. That was 1. Next 2 was clear, print form. This is how it is dancing. You should always have tab indices set properly on your form. So that if I have to use tab, it's going to the right position. This is your job again. And there are 2 ways. One, you can go to the properties and do it. But the easy way is open it up from edit and change it. There it is. Now you don't see the shorthand keys. They will not come till you do an alt. When you press alt, then they will start to show up. It's a bug. I have no solution for it. I don't know, like it's been a bug for ages. Since I started teaching Visual Studio. That is maybe 6, 7 years now. I don't know why. I have no clue. So our next job, next class will be to make these, to write event handlers for these buttons. Okay, we are done for today. Nothing of them will work right now, of course, but we are done for today. Yes, let me put this on GitHub. So I've created the user interface. Oh, yeah. Okay, so everything is on GitHub. Whatever we did today is on GitHub. Okay, so just go and look for me and look for Tuesday RAD 1004 Fall 2017. You have an idea. Any questions for me? Okay, good.
What's the meaning of print form? Like
what it will do is when I click on that button, this form will be printed, the form that you've created. Okay. That's what will happen. Okay.
One question. Okay, so
if you want to make horizontal spacing, no, horizontal.
I did that already.
Yeah.
The vertical one is not.
Yeah, because vertical is the first is here, the second is vertical spacing is this way. That's not what you want. You want to make it this way.
Okay, so
you do Control Z and you will come back.
Yeah.
Your name is missing from the right hand side. Never miss that. Okay, you will lose marks unnecessarily.
Okay.